Hey guys, what's going on? It's Dan. I am joined here today by. Do you want to go by Solanor, Chad, or Dylan today?
Uh, I think Chad is fine. It's got the least syllables, so it's the easiest to say.
Okay, and I'm joined by Chad, and we are going to be going through some power rankings for PDPL Season 3. I apologize about the slightly janky format, but I had slightly less time to throw this together than I hoped. So instead of our typical rankings that are pre-done and we just go through why we put them where we did, we're just going to talk through our process basically as we're going through these and try to agree on what we think the rankings are at the end. Uh, we're also not going to be considering the strength of the coach because every coach here is incredibly strong, as is the nature of the season. So instead, we're just going to be looking at each of these teams in a vacuum and sort of rating them. Do you have anything you want to add before we go ahead and dive on into it, Chad?
Uh, no, pretty much. I mean, this is pretty much the way that I've always done power rankings. So this will be a lot more up my alley than the way you typically do them. So it should be good fun.
Oh yeah, I am absolutely winging it this time with no preconceived thoughts. That'll be a lot of fun for me. But without any further ado, the first pick was KS Knight Rider, and his team ended up being Gouging Fire, Sableye, Jumpluff, Regigigas, Empoleon, Enamorous T, Mamoswine, Bruxish, Cleffa, and Brioni. So the first thing that sticks out to me with this team is that it's got a pretty well-defined Sun mode up top here, with the Jumpluff, Sableye, Gouging Fire. I do like the Empoleon. I think it's a lot better this generation now that Defiant's been replaced with Competitive. I think that gives it a lot of versatility, and I think getting that Mamoswine late is a pretty good deal for him as well, because I think Mamoswine, in a lot of the format, is weak to sort of that dual ground ice coverage. So I think there's a lot of really good things I like about this team. Does seem a little Trick Room weak. Bruxish is a setter, but probably not something you want to be bringing every week, even though it does have some useful niches. The speed, Jumpluff is a great tailwind setter if you can get Sun up with Sableye. But something I've found with Sableye, in seasons where I've had it and the option to set weather for things like Gouging Fire and Jumpluff, is that it really feels bad to use that as one of the four moves when Sableye has so many good options. But what are your thoughts on Chaos Knight Rider's team?
Well, first of all, KS Knight Rider sniped Empoleon from me, which was kind of messed up. Got a personal vendetta out for that. Otherwise, I think the team was pretty good because Gouging Fire is, I think it's a good mon. I brought it to Charlotte and it was really strong in my tournament there, so I really like the mon. I really don't like Sableye as a mon, but on this team, it's really good. I think Sableye is kind of annoying, but like on a team like this, pretty solid. The big thing that you didn't mention, like all the pieces that you brought up were good, but the big piece you didn't bring up was the Regigigas that is on this team. And I find Regigigas to be a bit odd on a team like this because I'm not sure if I'm wrong about this, but I was pretty sure that you can't worry seed your own side anymore. Is that true or am I making that up?
I don't think I've heard that, but I haven't seen anyone attempt it either, so it's not off the top of my head immediate knowledge. It wouldn't shock me if that change were implemented. And that would mean the Regigigas doesn't have any way to be activated.
I believe unless Bruxish gets something like Gill Swap, which I guess could be an option, which yeah, it doesn't get. I guess maybe does Sableye get like entrainment or something? Is that um
I looked through a couple
most
of
stuff?
different ways to potentially activate the Regigigas, and I wasn't. None of them immediately popped to mind when I was looking at this team.
Yeah,
Uh,
so it's like just like a big red question mark on this team for me because 40 points is not nothing. The Mons in that tier are pretty good. So Regigigas without an enabler is very questionable to me personally. Otherwise, like you said, the rest of the team is good. Like Mamo has a great offensive typing, Enamorous has a great offensive typing, Empoleon has a great defensive typing and ability. Um, Jumpluff is good, Sableye is good, Gouging Fire is a great offensive and defensive typing. So it's like Chaos Knight Rider did a great job of getting those typings down and just getting good mons. But the big question is definitely the Gigas, because like, what is he doing?
I think Worry Seed can still go sideways, and if that's the case, then it's an option, but it's still not. I don't know. That's a lot of resources into a Regigigas mode that I've always found to be slightly underwhelming, even with Max Strike. And without Max Strike, Regigigas isn't the fastest thing in the world, and while it hits really hard, I'm not sure if that does enough to justify the resources that would have to go into it.
Right, I agree. I disagree with the Max Strike take. I think that Gigas in Dynamax leagues was really strong, but in a non-Max league, I do tend to agree with your opinion that Gigas is a little questionable.
Yeah, I think it was definitely stronger in Max leads. But looking at this, where do you want to... Since he's the first one, he's probably going to move around somewhere, but do you think this is going to be like a top half, bottom half team?
I generally think... Alright, so we have 18 coaches, so generally there's going to be a team that looks like it's the best and a team that looks like it's the worst. So you have your number 1 team and your number 18 team. And for the 16 teams in the middle, I feel like we can break those up into quadrants on how good we think those are. So the quadrants would be like almost like a tier system. So like the first quadrant would be numbers 2 through 5. That would be like very strong teams, all that. So I don't know if that kind of if that vision makes sense.
Yeah,
Because
let's do that.
Because that's kind of what I'm seeing right now. It's like, okay, we can break apart the team we think is the best and the team that I know for a fact is probably the worst. Based entirely not on the coach's decision, but I guess based off of his decision to an extent. But in general, I think this team is good. I generally tend to think that top heavy teams are stronger than more like balanced teams. So I generally think that this is at least a top 9 team, just because Gouging Fire is strong and Empoleon like is a really good way to deter Intimidate. So like, yeah.
Okay. I think we can put it in that 6 to 9 range for now. And Gouging Fire being the first pick was interesting to me. It's strong. I'm not sure if it's first pick strong given the tier it was in, but I am very interested to see how it plays out.
Me too.
All right, so up next we have Otto. Why don't you take the first breakdown of this one?
Yeah, this team is great. So Otto, everything that I said about balanced teams just now, how I think that they're bad generally, Otto decided to spit in the face of that and chooses a team of 10 usable Mons pretty much on a weekly basis, except for maybe that Floette, but the Floette decision... Yeah, Floette is great. The Symbiosis paired with Roaring Moon, I think, is really strong. So that's cool. Otherwise, Otto drafted a team of just very usable Mons. Like, Otterpon is super good, obviously, like a top 5 Mon in real Regulation F. Gardevoir and Meowstic are both very good Psychic types, with one being offensive and the other being like a really good Prankster Mon. Poltegeist, I'm not sure if it's that good. I know it gets Trick Room in this gen, so I mean it makes it a little more versatile. You can either set it as a Trick Room setter or Shell Smash, or I've seen someone run it both on the same set, which was really cool. Like it was like Shell Smash, Trick Room, Shadow Ball, and Giga Drain or some shit like that. It was really strong. Treads is a great steel type, and Roaring Moon is a great, this team is just very usable. And he drafted like 4 viable Trick Room setters, like Delphox, Meowstic, Poltegeist, and Gardevoir are all like good. So yeah, this is definitely the closest team I've seen to be like a full balanced 10. I think it's very good personally. I think this team is super strong.
Yeah, I generally agree. I think Meowstic's one of the best support options in the game. I really like the flexibility that the Ogerpon brings. I think Iron Treads is pretty good value in Tier 3. I'm not going to say it's game-breaking or anything, but it's definitely solid for the tier. Crabominable is a great Trick Room sweeper. Rotom Fan, I've played with this generation. It's underwhelmed me a little bit, but, you know, for 40 points, it's not awful. And then just the option to have Roaring Moon with the Ogerpon, I think, is great. One thing I might have liked to see is instead of Ogerpon Wellspring, for the way this team ended up constructed, base Ogerpon might actually have been a bit better to give it that Defiant option.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think this team is incredibly solid. Good speed control both ways. I like the way that the speed tiers are set up. And I didn't even think about that Floette Roaring Moon combo, but like booster attack into also getting a Life Orb Roaring Moon, it could be incredibly dangerous. So I was sort of writing off the Floette until you brought that up. So I think that's actually a very good point. I think that this team... What was that?
Also, I have a couple points. I think you're right generally that Phantom is not very good. However, this team has several strong Earthquake clickers. So like Treads makes for a great Disquake partner, and then if you Terra Ground the Roaring Moon, it makes for another really good Disquake partner for the Rotom fan as well.
Yeah.
I think Treads in general got way better. With so many light mons being added. So like when I say light, like light and weight mons being present in the game, where it's like Heavy Slam becomes a viable move on Treads, giving it its strong Steel Stab. And then it also got high horsepower, which is like the strong solo ground type stab that you're looking for, like solo target ground type stab. So I think that Treads gets way better in this format. And partner that with like a Rotom, I think that's a really strong Disquake mode. Just like one of the, and you have the Gardevoir as well for the for the, what's the ability called, the one that lets you avoid your allies' hits. I can't remember offhand.
Oh, it's not Synchronize. It's not Trace. It's the other one. I'm forgetting it off the top of my head as well.
But telepathy. So
Yes.
yeah. So lots of different ways to work together with spread moves. So yeah, generally I think that this is a strong team. I would put this probably in that first quadrant of 2 to 5.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Somewhere in
and
here.
Looking at the other teams, I think there may be an argument to put this as number 1. So
yeah, I definitely think this is going to be in the discussion for top teams and something we're going to be coming back to compare against some of the other best teams. But up next, we've got Batista's team, which is another Ogerpon with the Hearth Flame. We got the Rotom Wash. We've got Hydreigon, Mimikyu, Cobalion, which is a really interesting fantasy core there. Iron Thorns, which is, as we know, the best Paradox Pokemon. Flagon, Electric, Raichu A, and Clauncher. So,
yeah.
Yep. I mean, this is another team where there's obviously just a good amount of balance on this team. The Ogerpon Rotom, you immediately have a Fire, Water, Grass core that also has an Electric type in it. I really like the Fantasy core with Hydreigon, Mimikyu, Cobalion. It's a bunch of things that have a good amount of bulk, decent output right away. The Hydreigon's output is obviously great and covers each other's weaknesses pretty well, especially when you consider the Hydreigon being immune to ground type attacks that the Cobalion and Iron Thorns are weak to. I do think the team is just generally a well put together team. It's got decent output, decent setup options. Maybe it's a bit less immediate damage than I'd typically like, and I'd like to see more speed control options. I understand the Mimikyu is a really consistent Trick Room setter, but I don't know if this team ever goes slow enough to successfully want to go in Trick Room. And then Hydreigon's a decent Tailwind option, but I don't know if it's the best. If there was a bit more variety and consistency in the speed control, I'd say that this is a top quadrant team. As it is, it's probably still borderline there for me in terms of just the overall power of the Pokemon and the value that was taken out of each tier. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally, like Batista, he's my guy. I think that this team is not, I guess it's not like my style of team. A lot of these mons fall in like pretty much the same speed tier between like 80 and 110 or so. Like every single viable mon on this team falls within that speed tier. So like the Trick Room matchup is pretty poor. You're really relying on Mimikyu to reverse Trick Rooms, or you're really trying to taunt down the Trick Room users. Generally that's kind of difficult. Yeah, I think the damage output is pretty good. Like you said, a lot of the mons feel like they need to turn a setup to get anything done first. So like, besides the Ogre Pond Fire and the High Dragon, like Rotom Wash, Mimikyu, Koba, and Thorns, like none of those guys are like dealing OHKOs for the most part, unless they're being boosted in some way. So generally, I think that this team is a little weaker as well. Like it's top heavy, and I don't know if I agree with some of the picks. Like I don't love Iron Thorns on this team personally. Like I know that there's a bunch of ground immunes, but I generally think that Iron Thorns is a bad value for the tier that it's in, even though it is a Paradox Mon and it has those great stats. Like I think that
I don't know.
generally
For the tier
generally
it's in, it's probably okay value. Like, it's obviously considerably worse than Tyranitar, but if you look at the Loaded Dice set or the Dragon Dance set, I think it's, as a tier 4 Pokemon, that's fine value.
I suppose I don't know. I generally think that that mon is just not the best. And I think that there may have been other options to consider in the tier 4, but I watched Batista's video and I understand the limit he kind of put on himself with using it. The limit was mons that only have one ability, I think. And so, like, yeah, obviously that's really going to hinder the
Yeah.
choices that you've got available. So,
just a little bit. And with that limit, I think this is a very well constructed draft within the limit, but maybe you're right. Maybe I'm overrating it slightly compared to the league as a whole. But so are you feeling second or third quadrant then based on
I'm generally feeling red quadrant probably right now, the third one.
Okay, and we can come back and address that in a little bit.
Certainly.
And then we've got El Flamingo. I don't think this is a mustache theme team this time, which is weird for him. But I'll let you handle the initial breakdown.
Well, he did draft one mustache mon, which is that Ogre Pond Cornerstone. As a fellow mustache connoisseur, I can generally appreciate that pick. I think Cornerstone is pretty good. You know, out of the Ogre Ponds, obviously, in real BGC, it's the least consistent, but you know, it still has access to really good moves. And Rock Grass is like still a very good typing, so definitely make no mistake. Make no mistake there. Defensively speaking, that typing is really strong. Otherwise, the team is pretty good. I see good Firewater Grass Core with the Ogre Pond Suicune and the Iron Moth. I think Iron Moth is great. It's a good mon, and it got a huge buff in this format with the Power Herb Meteor Beam set. That's really great for it. Scrafty is good. Articuno is good. Like, this is just a team of pretty good mons. I don't like Rotom, base Rotom. I think it never does anything, even with. I think the Rotom's got Electro Web back, so even with Electro Web, like that, I don't think that mon is good. And I'm not sure really like what Munchlax is doing here. Like, I know it has like relatively okay baby stats, but
oh, it's a trick room sweeper. No,
you
you run the belly drum set on it, and it's got base 5 speed.
It's certainly something. The bulk isn't bad. 135 HP is definitely could do worse than that. But
you run belly drum on it.
If he runs belly drum on it, I'd be shocked. But I also have to curse Flamingo a little bit as well. He stole Poltergeist, which was one of the tier 7s that I want. And not even because I think it's like particularly good. Like, I know it's got the good ability and all that. I just think it's cute, and I would have used it if I would have drafted it. So if Flamingo doesn't use Poltergeist at least once this season, then I'm putting his team at the very bottom of the tier list. But otherwise, I generally look at this team and think like, yeah, it's a pretty good team of like 8 mons, because I don't think that Munchlax is that good, and I don't think that Rotom is that good. So, but those other ones are all pretty consistent brings.
Yeah, even the Poltergeist being his form of redirection. I think it's a lot of really solid Pokemon. I think it does suffer a little bit from speed tiers, not as much as some of the previous teams, because the Iron Moth does sort of raise the base speed tier, but the speed control being that Articuno G and the Suicune those are in the weird spot where they probably want to set Tailwind, even though Articuno can also set Trick Room. But they are going after the opposing speed control, so they're going to have one less turn to take advantage of their speed control.
Right.
So I do think that the team suffers a little bit from that, and from a lack of sort of well-defined mode or plan. Like if you look back at Chaos Knight Rider's team, you've got the obvious Sun mode. If you look at even Otto's team, like you said, you've got that Disquake sort of stuff, or a lot of things that can ignore opposing spread moves. But if you look at Flamingo's team, you just sort of have a collection of generally good mons, but I don't know if they really add too much on top of each other. I don't know how much they improve each other as opposed to just being solid in their own right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see that. And I've used Iron Moth before. It's definitely the type of mon that, like, you want to have pretty good speed control with it, like at least a mon that's like 110 speed or higher to give it that speed control. That way you're not feeling pressured to run the booster speed on it every week, because it's really easy to fall into that trap and miss out on good damage output by being forced to run that set. So yeah, generally I think the team is strong. I mean, you have a lot, like you have a lot of the tools that you typically would want, but like redirection, multiple fake out users, good damage. I think that the physical damage, the immediate physical damage, is also a little bit questionable on this team, being limited to kind of just that ogre pawn. But other than that, like, you know, special damage is strong. So
I would say it's a bit soft to snarl, but Articuno having competitive saves it a little bit there. But what do you think? And is this another red tier team for you?
I think it's like high red tier or low orange tier, generally is where I'm kind of seeing it. I think compared to Batista's team, it's slightly better than Batista's team, but I think that against like Chaos Knight Rider's team, it's significantly worse than Chaos Knight Rider's team. So
okay, we can do this for now.
That looks good.
And then adjust
I think
it if needed.
For sure. I think we're going to see a lot of teams that have kind of this style of build, though, where it's just like a bunch of mons thrown together. Most of them are going to be like around 8 useful mons, and then 2 or 3 like not as useful mons. I think that generally that's the style of team that a lot of folks drafted.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to see if that prediction is correct.
Well, then we got Mario's team, which is...
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely the latter.
Yeah, this one's wild. So first pick the Komolo.
Great pick.
It probably is a great pick. It's just wild to see it in the first pick. There are no tier 1 Pokemon on this team and only one tier 2, which is the Spectrier.
Yeah,
but we've got a lot of tier 3 and 4 options with Komolo, Magmortar, Azelf, Weirdeer, Gothorita, Fezandipiti, and Meowscarada. I think that last pick, Meowscarada, is great value and works really well on this team. And it's rounded out with the Lapras and the Greedent. Again, I'm not sure what the defined modes on this team are. I think the speed control is a little questionable. I know the Fezandipiti Tailwind is fine. I wouldn't say it's the most consistent thing in the world. And then it's got a lot of Trick Room options, but only really Greedent that wants to be a Trick Room sweeper. And Greedent is, as we all know, just discount Munchlax when it comes to Belly Drum, normal types, sweeping, and Trick Room. But I do think that it's a good team. It's got a lot of power. It's got a decent speed spread, which is something that a lot of these other teams don't have, and it's got redirection. Like, it checks a lot of my boxes. I just don't think the speed control is super consistent out of it, and that's my one knock against it. But this is a style team that I think can be really successful. It's going to be a lot on Mario to build, and you know, Mario's obviously a really skilled coach, so I think it could give him a lot of upside there. I'm generally a fan. I'm talking myself more and more into this team as I'm going through this.
Yeah, I think that speaking on it, I think that this is a very Mario-esque team, right? Like, this is the style of team that Mario really likes. You know, the Fezandipiti, which is spelled wrong on this funny. The Fezandipiti being able to spread poisons, and then Spectrier being able to clean up with Hex is like it's like a classic Mario like tech that he likes to play towards, which I think it's cool to see stuff like that. but like you were talking about how the speed control is bad, and I generally agree because I think that on the Trick Room side of thing, he has like 7 Trick Room setters, which is fine and well, but he has mons that are just generally faster than the majority of the opposition's mons. So like Spectrier and Meowscarada are not mons that get outsped really, like in a general draft league match.
Yeah.
Um, so just like that alone, like having the advantage of like just having a mon that's faster, like having 2 mons that are faster, like even Azelf is like 115, that's faster than a lot of the like general ogre pawns and that 110 speed tier. So like his mons are just faster usually, which is
Hmm.
good, like obviously great start. But yeah, and I agree. He just has a lot of tools. Gothorita is really good fake out, and he has no EV-like competition, which is really good. Then generally just good utility. I think that Lapras as the water type is going to be the big thing that really holds this team down for me. Lapras as a water type generally tends to not be very good. Lapras as an ice type is fine because it gets access to like all of the best ice type moves, right? Like um, freeze dry and blizzard and stuff. But
Yeah.
as a water type, it doesn't have access to like the best water type moves, especially since Lapras didn't get or it has never gotten Scald. So you're really going to be relying on like Hydro Pump and Scummy Water moves like that. So um,
Chilling water or whatever it's called. Base 50 power, reduce your opponent's attack roll.
yeah, I think that that's bad. So generally, I like the team. I like the team, and I think Magmortar and Meowscarada are great as the fire grass part of the core. But I think that Lapras is kind of a questionable pick that makes me a little hesitant. And I also generally question the Azelf pick. Like I know Azelf is fast and it's relatively strong, but
Mhm.
I'm curious as to like why he felt the need to draft a third psychic type
Well, he
on
picked
his
that
team.
first. I was
Well,
psychic
yeah,
types.
yeah, I guess that's fair. But why 3 psychic types is kind of what I'm looking at. Like, just feels a little strange. But like, I think the team is good. I'd rank it in at least the second, the second quadrant,
Yeah.
probably pretty high up in the second quadrant. So,
Yeah, let's take a look there. How do you think it compares to Chaos Knight Rider's team?
I think KS's team is a little bit better than Mario's team. I think Mario's team is good, and I think it really fits his play style. But we're like keeping that kind of out of the equation. So, um,
Yeah, I can agree with that, especially because, like you said, the speed control is a little questionable. Uh, but
yeah,
yeah, I think it's definitely a solid team, and we might be addressing those and moving them up a little bit. Uh, with
yeah,
Open Terra, I think you just put normal Azelf, and then you just lead it next to Spectre, and everyone's just got to respect the Terra normal explosion every game, and just
true.
mess with people.
I did forget that explosion is a move that Azelf gets, and it's like one of the better users of it because it's fast. So it's
Yeah,
fair.
it's kind of funny. But up next, we got Joshy's team, who has Iron Hand's Screamtail, and I just had to do a double take because I just played Joshy in the GLDL, and he also has an Iron Hand Screamtail team. So he's running
Right
2 of
on.
them at the same time.
Getting a lot of practice with that core, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously pretty solid. You got the Iron Hand Screamtail. Screamtail, I think, is awesome in draft the more that I see it used. Dragapult is very strong. Scizor is a pretty good priority user, and that was a bit of a snipe towards me as well.
Unlucky.
Yeah, I I was sniped more this draft than like in every other draft I've ever done combined. It was not not ideal. But
Man.
Flareon, Cryogonal, Floatzel, Saucebuck, Tornadus T, and Venonat. Tornadus T is a above average Tailwind setter, so that helps with the speed control. Iron Hands can work under Tailwind or Trick Room, but Screamtail being the Trick Room setter is a bit weird because Screamtail doesn't actually like playing under Trick Room that much. Uh, so there might be some speed tier problems with this team just a little bit, but again, Tornadus being fast, Dragapult being one of the fastest things in the format, probably top 10 at least, even with the Paradox Pokemon. It's a good collection of Pokemon. I do think it is a little physical heavy. It's a bit weak to Intimidate or Will-O-Wisp. Obviously, the Dragapult helps to Intimidate a little bit, but there's not really huge counterplays to those things. I think the type distribution is pretty good. Everything about this team just screams solid. Everything seems to work well enough together. I think Iron Hand Screamtail is strong enough that it works as a main mode. I mean, I don't want to say that this team's middle of the road as a bad connotation, but middle of the road in that this team doesn't seem to do anything exceptionally except have an Iron Hands, but it does a lot of things really well and can play in a couple different ways. What are your thoughts on the team?
I am generally going to disagree with you. I'm not so sure I'm in love a whole lot with this team. I think looking at this team, I think that the same 5 Mons are going to be coming pretty much every week. I think that generally Josh is going to be bringing Hands, Screamtail, Pult, Scizor, and Torn T basically every week, with cycling in one of those last Mons in there. And I don't think Flareon is definitely Flareon is okay. They're all just kind of okay, right? Flareon is an okay fire type. Cryogonal is pretty decent as an ice type that has freeze dry. Sawsbuck I think is not that good. Venonat as a redirector is not that good either. Just one of those baby low and I know Mario is going to be cursing me out as he hears that, but I don't think Venonat's all that great generally. So it just kind of feels like, there's 5 pretty solid Mons on this team, and then the low tier value just feels a little bit eh. And especially, I think that water is one of the most important types to have in Draft League, having at least a decent water type. And I just don't know if Floatzel's that guy. I've never been impressed by it generally. But
yeah, without rain, it's definitely a bit underwhelming. I do see your point with this team being very top heavy.
Yeah.
How do you think it compares to some of the other teams then that we've taken a look at?
I personally, this is probably my least favorite team. I understand that it has some good Mons Screamtail, Hands, and Pult. I won't say anything about that core. I think that core is great, but I generally don't love the rest of the team. Torn T is one of the least reliable Mons generally. It's good Tailwind Setter for sure, but Bleakwind Storm, all of the Storm moves are just not reliable. And unlike Landorus or Thundurus, Tornadus doesn't have good alternatives to that Storm move. So you're gonna inevitably you will be put in a position where Torn T has to hit a Bleakwind Storm to win a game, and that's just not a risk that I really love. So I think generally Torn T is okay, but it's not reliable, and that just makes me not think very highly of it.
So are you thinking 4th quadrant for this team then?
That's just generally what I think. I think that this is a 4th quadrant team. I think like I said, the 5 are good, but it's 5 Mons. None of the rest of them are impressive. So
yeah, I get that argument. We can put it here for now, and maybe readdress it if we see some teams that are noticeably worse than it, or maybe it drops down if there aren't.
Yeah, sounds good.
I might have it a bit higher, but I also generally agree with your arguments.
All right. So this team is going at the bottom, right?
Sure.
Defez is my goat, but this is definitely when I was making my comment at the start about how there's clearly a best team and clearly a worst team. This is the team I was talking about for the worst team. I can go ahead and start us off with this team. So Defez was obviously using the wheel to make his picks, and that came up with this result. I don't think that the result is horrible, but in a team that's just as high, like in a league that's as high powered as this one, with just like so many good players and everyone's drafting like pretty good teams, this team just feels like it like lacks a lot of tools. Like, you know, it's a pretty bulky, slower playing team. Just like looking at it, a lot of these mons don't have speed tiers higher than like 60. Generally, like, and then there's only one trick room setter, and there's only one fake out mon, and there's only one redirection mon. So it's like the game plans I think are going to be kind of linear. You're looking at a team like this, you got your clawets or colossal stuff, and then trick room, and then there's like a random Zapdos and a random Ogrepon. It just, like, looking at this team, it feels like it was randomly generated. And as a result, I think that he has good pieces, but I think that
it was.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, again, it's like it's usable, but I don't think it's the best. And I don't think it's even particularly great.
Yeah,
but that's my piece on it.
The speed tiers are what really kills this team, I think, because it really wants Trick Room basically every game. And dropping the Glastrier for the Mudstone might have even hurt the Trick Room mode a little bit. But, you know, it was a randomly generated team. I don't think there's too much we need to say about it for the way that he decided to approach it. Lechonk's going to come every week. And I do think Granbull Berserker as part of a Fantasy Core down in Tier 4 are good to pair together and a good value.
Yeah.
And then Claw Colossal are another good pair of Tier 4 Pokemon, but I just think the higher tier Pokemon don't really work well together.
Agreed.
Alright, up next we've got Pedons, who did the Archaludon first pick with a Blaziken, Florges, Sneasel, Virizion, Articuno, Pachirisu, Vikavolt, Oranguru, Riolu, Poliwrath, and Clodsire. So he went with a very balanced team, nothing below Tier 5, and it's got some pretty obvious modes. It's got the Virizion Sneasel, which I think is decent there. It's got the Archaludon, and I guess does Sneasel get Rain Dance? Something on this team
Yeah,
Rain Dance.
it does.
And Riolu also, I believe, with Prankster.
Yep.
Because he's got the Vikavolt, the Archaludon, and the Poliwrath that all take advantage of the rain decently well. I do think there's some type redundancy on this team. I'm not a huge fan of. Pachirisu's not my favorite redirector in the world for this team. I understand the Clodsire pick. I pick it a lot in draft, so I think it's fine. Maybe not the best.
I mean, it got buffed. It got buffed for this like format. Gets high horsepower now as a single target ground move, so I think that's solid.
Yeah, it's still a yawn bot mostly.
Yeah.
but you know, it's got modes which I like. The speed control is a bit questionable. Rangaru's like a pretty awesome Trick Room setter, but Tailwind, I don't think I'm seeing anything great there. I have not been in love with Riolu this gen, even though it does get Prankster coaching back. Articuno's fine. It's a lot of stats on a Tier 5, but, you know, the weaknesses are pretty crippling on it. This team just has a lot of quad weaknesses, which makes me a little nervous, and I've never been a huge fan of Florges. I guess it can do some cool things, but there's not a booster energy Pokemon on this team to take advantage of the Florges, like on the
Symbiosis. Yeah, and it's even more of a bummer on this team because you have both of the Symbiosis users and no booster energy user, which is very sad. Because on a team like this, I think that would be really cool. You get a lot of like flexibility with your item.
If they are next to each other and one of them has a citrus berry and consumes it, does the item just get passed back and forth until the game ends?
No, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
So, I was gonna say, nope,
Yes.
nope. Generally speaking, I think that this team has a fair bit of tools. You know, obviously drafting 12 mons within, you know, it kind of did what Mario did, only drafting one Mon that was higher than 60 points, which was the Arcaludon, which I think is a great pick. Really good. Really hard to take advantage of Arcaludon's like special defense weakness because it only has like two types that it's weak to. So generally, Arcaludon in draft is not forced to run the Assault Vest nearly as much as it would be in like real VGC. Um, Sneasel is a goat. I loved using Sneasel, especially in earlier formats, but now Sneasel is like way better because you get the moves that make it good back. So like before, Sneasel was forced to run Ice Punch because unlike Weavile, it doesn't get Ice Spinner, but now they gave it Triple Axle back and Knockoff back. So Sneasel is like a super great mon, and I have a feeling that Pedons is going to bring it pretty much every week because it supports so much on the team with Fake Out, and it has multiple mons that it can beat up into. Like you were mentioning the beat up with the Virizion, but it can also beat up into Arcaludon for that stamina stuff as well. So I think that this team is like kind of built around Sneasel in this really cool way. And he could even like relive the glory of his Worlds run by running manual snowscape on Sneasel next to his Articuno. Or something like that, I don't know.
Hey, it's a real strategy that could happen in this game.
Generally, I think the Trick Room mode is strong too. He has like really good Trick Room attackers with Vikavolt, and even like the Arcaludon under Trick Room is strong. So generally, I think that this team is pretty good. I think that it just has a lot. Like I'm looking at it, it's just a lot to look at, which is generally a good thing for a coach that's as creative as Pedons is when it comes to his sets. So
yeah, and it's a lot to prep for as well. How do you think it compares to El Flamingo's team?
Better.
Okay, so if you drop them down, what about Mario's?
I think it is the slightly better version of Mario's team. So I think that I were to put it Chaos Knight Rider, Pedons, Mario's, Flamingos. That's kind of the order that I would put those four in.
Okay. I'll leave a bit of a space between Flamingo and Mario for now in case something fills that, but I might just bump him back up in a sec.
We might also bump Chaos Knight Rider as well because that team is pretty strong.
Yeah, I'll just bump that up one for now because we only have one team in the top quadrant right now and one in the bottom quadrant. So we'll see when we get there. But next, I'll let you do the breakdown since it's my team.
It's your team, so we won't have you say too much about it. Generally, this is another like one of those. I drafted 8 Pokemon and have 2 tier 5s, which I think is a good plan. Drafting your team around Chien-Pao is usually a good recipe for the fact that you're going to draft a bunch of mons with priority, and you're going to draft a bunch of physical attackers. And Dan's team, your team here is no exception to that rule. Drafted like 4 priority users with Lucario, Azu, Arcanine, and actually I don't know if Braviary gets any priority, but maybe not. But anyway, yeah, no priority off Braviary, but that's fine. Drafted some okay special attackers with Exeggutor and Mismagius. Mismagius is pretty generally good at usually one thing, and that's to imprison Trick Rooms. And that's a pretty valuable service on a team like this, which just has so many mons that are wanting to hit first. Generally, I don't love the speed control on this team, but you kind of get around that by having just a ton of prio spam. And Braviary is just not the most consistent tailwind setter because it's not fast. So, but Braviary does provide a pretty good service as a Defiant Mon on a team that is very physical. Otherwise, your defensive cores are pretty good. Arcanine, Azu, Exeggutor, and Lucario alone make up both Fantasy and Firewater Grass core, and I generally think that all 4 of those mons are great I really like all of them on this team. And Electivire, it got huge, just like absolutely massive buffs in this in this this gen with, Terra is great because you can run types that are weak to electric while not having to worry about them because of motor drive, which is cool. Just access to really good moves. Um, and having obviously the big thing, having the redirection is nice. I would have loved to have seen a better fake out mon on this team, but fake out mons are kind of hard to come by, so I understand that that's kind of a difficult thing. But yeah, I generally think that this team is pretty good. You're probably going to be like your team is going to be very similar to is it Joshy's team? Yeah, Joshy's team, where it's like, okay, I'm going to bring Chen Pao, Azu, and Arcanine pretty much every week, and you have to figure out what the other three are going to be out of the 4 remaining like real mons that I have, or I guess 5, because
Impotent's a real mon.
I don't agree with you, but I understand why you would think that. I do know that
Diglett trapping people is a real thing.
Yeah, Diglett is fun, but generally speaking, you're not going to be bringing mons like that very often. So, but that's generally my thought. I think the team is good. I think it's generally a pretty good Chen Pao team. Chen Pao teams, I feel like, all draft very similarly, and you didn't really break the mold of a Chen Pao team very much, which is, fine. Chen Pao teams usually do well, so I think that the team is good. I think the biggest steal of the draft for you, Loki, is that the Alolan Executor, that mon is really, really good, and I'm excited, especially in draft leagues. So I'm excited to see you put in work with that mon, because I generally think it's a very strong option.
Yeah, my draft was a little bit on fire compared to what I wanted to draft, because Azumarill and Arcanine were not in my initial plan. I was going to be taking Serial Edge round 2, because I'm like, that Pokemon's obviously going to be there in round 2, and then it wasn't. So I just had to throw out the plan and redo everything. So this is basically done on the fly, and I'm pretty happy with it. I do think the Lucario adds a lot, and the Executor adds a lot. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with it, but since this is my team, I'll give you basically sole control. Where do you think this falls?
Let me look. I think that generally, let me look at Flamingo's team. I think generally it's better than Flamingo's team, but I don't think it's better than Mario's team. I would probably put this at the top of, either at the top of the red quadrant or at the bottom of the orange quadrant, over Flamingo and Batista, because the mons that you picked are just so strong and usually do so well, right? Like Arcanine H, I've drafted multiple times. It is actually one of the best mons in draft, and I stand by that opinion. So I generally think that you just have consistently good mons, and so the team is good, I think.
Okay, yeah. I'll throw it there for now, and we'll see later. I've never actually drafted a Qianpao team or an Arcanine team, so I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, see what you do. See how you cook.
All right. Speaking of cooking, up next we've got Stranger Danger, with another pretty top-heavy team here. We've got the Urshifu Rapid Strike, the Iron Jugulus, the Serena, Sylveon, Volcarona, Luxray, Munkidori, and that's the entire team.
Sliggoo H is real, but otherwise I agree.
Okay. Okay, I love Iron Jugulus. I don't know how much the Meteor Beam buff is going to be important for it, but it is at least something else it can do, and I think it's great a support Pokemon in draft. I think Urshifu really likes it as well. Serena and Volcarona are solid. I do like the ability to not get your Iron Jugulus faked out, and Volcarona gives you a setup option that also has some immediate special damage, where Iron Juguluses can be a bit low. Sylveon works decently well as a switch-in for a lot of the things that Urshifu doesn't want to take, and vice versa. And then the Luxray for Intimidate is, it's just a solid tier 4 Intimidate option. It's a very
Yeah.
narrow team, but it's a very powerful team in how narrow it is. Like
I mean,
Volcrona, Serena, Urshifu's good, and then there's some setup options as well. But what were you saying?
I think you like Monkey Dory is another mon on this team, and I think that Monkey Dory in Draft League is typically pretty good. Like Toxic Chain is fine as an ability, but this mon can't really abuse it as well because it doesn't have like great spread and it's not particularly bulky. But you have Monkey Dory also gets Frisk, and I think that Frisk is actually like Frisk on a fake out mon is kind of nuts because you can like immediately figure out like what you can and can't fake out. Because it's like, oh, like covert cloak, okay, I can't fake him out. Like, oh, he has an assault vest. Like, oh yeah, that's like it's like an easy fake out. And then like mind games after that can come into play. So I think that Monkey Dory as a tier 3 is a really good pick. But I generally agree with you. I think that Stranger is going to be using basically a mix of those top 7 mons, and I generally think that the team is going to be Urshi, Jugs, Zarina, Sylveon, Volk, and Monkey Dory. I think generally that's like the core of the team, and that's what he's going to be bringing most. And I think that those 6 are not incredibly flexible. Obviously all of them have slight variations in what they can do, but generally like they have pretty straightforward play styles. So I think I agree with you that the team is pretty like the mons are good, but it's a super straightforward team, and that can be good and bad because like it's easy to build a team like that, but it's also easy to prep against a team like that too. So despite how strong the mons are, it makes me want to put it a little bit on the lower end. I don't know if I would put it in the blue quadrant, but I don't know how opposed I would be to that either. So,
do you think it's better than Batista's team?
I'm gonna look at Batista's team. I think it's kind of a better version of Batista's team because Batista's team is kind of the same thing, right? It's like 7 mons generally that have straightforward play styles. So, and I think that the mons on Stranger's team are just a little bit better than the ones on Batista's team. So yeah, I generally think that that's where I would put it.
Okay, so I'll move his down 1 and we'll put Stranger in here for now. Feels like we're just building from the middle out. We're just going to be progressively pushing more things to the outside.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? It certainly does.
All right, up next we got Ollie's team. We got Ursaluna, Blood Moon, Furrygraph, Toad Squirrel, so there's your Trick Room mode. Porygon 2, there's also your Trick Room mode. Venusaur, Sneasel, Thwackey, Toucannon, Ampharos, Vespiquen. I'm not in love with this team.
Neither am I completely get it.
I think the Porygon 2 is unnecessary when you already have the Furrygraph. Toad Squirrel's a fine redirector, but it sort of doubles up on ground with Ursaluna. Like, the move Ice Punch just sort of sweeps through a lot of this team.
Yeah, any ice move is kind of bad.
Yeah, this is one of those teams where Mamoswine looks really good. Because I think every single Pokemon except for Furrygraph is weak to one of the 2 stabs, and Vespiquen.
No, Vespiquen is weak to ice too.
Oh, Vespiquen. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Never mind.
This team is doomed. It's literally Porygon and Furrygraph against Mamoswine. Everyone else is soloed.
So yeah, this is. I mean, obviously there's some powerful stuff that's going on. Like, let's give it some credit. The Furrygraph, Porygon 2, Ursaluna is going to mean that Trick Room gets up consistently, and Ursaluna gets to hit really hard there. And even Sneasel with Fake Out. But beyond that, honestly, I'm not sure I like this team more than Depis' team.
Really? I think that
might be a hot take.
It's definitely a take. I guess I could kind of see it, but I think it's better than Depes' team because I don't know. I'm looking at it, and the big issue I see with this team is it has a huge Eviolite problem. So like, you have P2 the Hisuian Sneasel, which I think Hisuian Sneasel is generally just a way worse version of the Johto Sneasel. It just doesn't get like the moves that makes the Johto Sneasel good, like the beat up, the snarl. Or it might get snarl actually. No, so it doesn't get beat up, doesn't get snarl, doesn't get icy wind, doesn't get knockoff. Like it's missing a lot of the moves that make the other one good. So in general, I think that this Sneasel is like generally not that good. But yeah, like beyond that, you have 3 Mons that like need the Eviolite. Like P2 needs it, Sneasel needs it, and Thwackey needs it. And that's a really bad problem to have, I think, just generally speaking.
Sneasel can probably be Sash a lot of the time, but I get the feeling.
And so then it's like you're tripling up, or actually quadrupling up on normal types. So like Ursa, Farig, P2, and Toucanon are like all normal types. That's not a good type to really stack like that. I think that Venusaur with no sun doesn't make a lot of sense, especially considering you have like a better sleep option with the Toedscruel. I think and a better grass type with the Thwackey. Like you said, I think there's a ton of redundancy on this team, and that the team doesn't like Ursaluna Blood Moon can be used under Tailwind. Like it has real VGC results of it being good in Tailwind. So like I generally think that if I'm like looking at an Ursa team, it's like, okay, I want to see good Trick Room, which, great job picking that Fergarath. That's a good mon. But then like I would want to see a Tailwind mode as well to, really make opponents like think about the team. So generally, I still think I like it better than Depez because I think that Blood Moon is just one of the most absurd mons.
Yeah. Okay.
But I see your argument where it's like damn, like this team definitely could be optimized.
Yeah.
So I would put it in probably the blue.
Okay. Yeah, we can put it there for now. And then we've got this team, which I will let you break down the Emboss's team.
Okay. So Emboss has Baxcalibur, Alecki, Donphan, Primarina, Torracat, Superior, Corv, Hypno, Heracross, and Pignite. It's a pretty usable team. Generally, I think that it falls kind of under the category of having like 8 useful mons. I know that Charles or C-Rad has used Hypno once in one draft league match ever where it actually did something versus Panda one time. But other than that showing, I think that Hypno has never really been all that good. So I'm not sure if it's going to be that good on this team. But other than that, the team has great picks. Like Baxcalibur is absurd. Alecki, I think, is a very good draft league mon still, despite having the problems that it has always had with being super dependent on electric as its primary attacking stab. Like ground types are not that good ground types are not that common, so I feel like it's not a super big issue, especially since you're pairing it up with Baxcalibur, who dunks on most ground types, dunks on most grass types, dunks on most dragon types that all resist the Alecki attacks. So I think that that core is a really great starting point. I think the big exception to your rule that you were talking about earlier with not having like fast Tailwind, I think Corviknight is like the one big exception to that, because Corviknight has like a lot of roles that it can serve outside of just Tailwind, but it also can serve as like another Tailwinder. I think on a team like this, I would have preferred a faster Tailwind setter just because Baxcalibur kind of likes it, but not bad. Donphan is good, low tier, ground type generally good. Primarina and Torracat and Superior make a good fire water grass core. I'm generally not in love with Torracat as like an intimidator. I still think it like isn't quite bulky enough or really like strong enough, but I'll let it do its thing. I don't think Torracat got any super big and buffs that make it way better, except for maybe knockoff. Which does it even get knockoff actually? Like Incineroar? No, it doesn't.
No.
So yeah, fuck Torcat. Mana's bad. um, but yeah, generally speaking, I think the team is pretty good. I'm excited to see how Superior does because Superior is one of those mons like see if it's
Yeah, I think
see if it's gonna be good.
it'll be okay. I really like the type distribution on this team. I like the speed distribution. I wish it had one thing that was a bit slower to have a better fight against Trick Room, but he does have some priority options. The Torcat is a decent pivot against Trick Room, is one thing. And then the Max Caliber with the Ice Shard does threaten a lot of damage into Trick Room at priority. So I can understand that. And Primarina, you can get that to underspeed a lot if you just give it some speed reducing items. So there are still some options here.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is a me style team. I did not draft a me team. This is a very me team, where it's big, bulky attackers, decent speed control around it, maybe not the best speed control, and then just the ability to play with a lot of different things, like Primarina and Excalibur, I think alone are just a really good combo, and then put that with Corviknight, and you've got a really interesting fantasy core that I really like as the backbone of this team. For me, looking at the rankings, I might put this above Chaos's team.
Okay. I can see that.
I'd put it above Otto's team too.
I don't think I would put this team above Otto's team. I think Baxcalibur Alecki is a fire core, and definitely pretty good, but
no, it's a Dragon Electric core
or whatever. Ice Electric.
Yeah, but no, I know what you mean.
Oh, I get it.
Okay, we can put this here for now.
Okay.
But I think I might like this team more than you do.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's strong, but you.
But again, I know it's a me style team, so I'm probably not the best point of reference for that.
Yeah, you're definitely biased.
Yeah, I'm a little biased there. All right. I'll let you do this one too, so I can take your team when it comes up.
Sounds good. Okay, so we got Wakeman. Wakeman decided to just go all in at the start of the draft, dropping 200 points right away on two pretty good mons. So, Single Strike Urshifu, Gholdengo, those are both draft league goats right there. Especially if you can find a way to pair them with some good consistent speed control, some good tailwind cooking. Those two are basically going to be alone doing the majority of the damage, and look at that, he picked up a good prankster tailwind mon with the Illumise, so that's a great pickup. I think that generally Wakeman's going to be kind of reliant on that trio to be like the big, scary, consistent thing on the team. But I mean, it's very good, very scary. Like Illumise is super, super strong, but yeah, so you got that Salazzle for Fake Out, and then you get this little Trick Room core with Stantler, Araquanid, and Clefable. And I mean, Araquanid even could work under Tailwind as well. Like, it's not the slowest mon, so you could work that under Tailwind too, and it's still strong. Clefable's good redirector, Stantler, Intimidate. Like, a lot of these mons have like pretty clear and pretty defined roles, but they are good mons. And then Zebstrika is a mon that I actually had no idea was as saucy as it is, but Zebstrika is actually kind of good. It has 3 good abilities with Lightning Rod and Motor Drive, and then Sap Sipper as well. So just good support moves as well. Generally not the best physical attack, but it has good coverage, which helps it out a little as well. And then the last 2 months don't exist and aren't real, but I generally think that like the backbone of this team, you dropped you dropped over half of your points on Urshifu, Gholdengo, and Illumise, and that is a really strong core, and I think that he's going to bring it like every week. So yeah, I'm excited to see.
Yeah, like even you count the Clefable in there as well, because you just redirect and hit Nasty Plot, then Clefable goes down, you switch into Illumise, you hit Tailwind, and then you just make it rain 3 times.
Yeah.
Like,
True.
yeah. Oh, wait, it's a Wakeman team. Let me guess. Prankster Tailwind with a Clef. Two attackers. One's a special ghost type. One's a physical fighting type. Oh, and a Salazzle. I
Yep.
am shocked. Shocked,
Yep.
I tell you, shocked. But no, it's definitely a good team. I think it probably
Yeah.
goes somewhere in the top quadrant.
I think it goes in the top. I think it's like at the very bottom of the top quadrant because I think that this is like the epitome of drafting like a super. Like I drafted 8 Mons and they all have like very apparent jobs that I want them to do, and they're all good at the jobs that I want them to do. So I think that Salazzle BGC. Yep. I generally think this is like probably the best execution of the top heavy concept that we've seen so far. I really like it.
But we'll see if there's another team that takes that one spot, or if we're gonna eventually just push Otto all the way up there.
Yeah.
Okay, so after Wakeman, we've got your team, which started with Comfey, which has dual speed control, so that's cool. Rillaboom, I love the terrain, I love everything Rillaboom does. It's really straightforward, but it's good at its roles. Latios, Mistball buff makes it a very solid draft Pokemon. Skeleturge as well. Sneasler, you're going to have fun clicking Dire Claw and just seeing what happens all the time. Bisharp is decent. I'm not sure if I love the fit on this team so much, but I guess you do need the Intimidate deterrent. Vaporeon is a very solid water type that's going to give you a lot of bulk. Fortunately, we all know Muddy Water never misses, so that makes Vaporeon fantastic.
And we got Scald back, so I'm never gonna have to worry about that unreliable ass move again.
Okay, you get Scald back. Electros, it's a solid. It doesn't have any weaknesses. You'll never have to tear it. Trapinch might actually be a Pokemon. The other two aren't. But yeah, this is it's a pretty well-rounded team of probably 8 that are solid, real options. They have a lot of things. I think Rillaboom and Latios works well together. And I guess Bisharp is like discount King Gambit in that core as well. So I see what you're going for there. Maybe I'm just not hugely in love with it, but I still think it's fine. Skeleturge I love in draft. I think that's a really good pick. Comfey on grassy terrain, I believe Floral Healing, does it do 2/3 in grassy terrain?
It's 75% in
75%.
grassy terrain.
Yeah, so I mean, like, that's obviously a really powerful thing that's going to be happening a lot. The speed control is okay. It's still a little soft to trickling for my liking, and the speed tiers are pretty middling for the most part, except for the Sneasler and Latios to some extent, but even they are not the fastest things in the format. Bulk is decent, and the Comfey definitely complements the bulk pretty well, as long as things are surviving a turn. And I actually think Comfey healing a Skeleturge is the scariest thing on this team. But do you have anything you want to add on your team? But I think that covers most of what I'm seeing with it.
Yeah, the big thing, I really wish I could have drafted Poltergeist instead of Capsicid, man. I really, like, that's the only thing that I'm, like, really bummed out about this team. You guys are also very lucky. I got talked out of drafting Registeel, so, yeah, that was,
Registeel Comfey, and then you just lose to a crit 3 or 4 weeks in a row because you realize you can't take 18 hits in a row without being crit.
Hey man. But yeah,
I think it's solid. I think I actually might drop Wakeman down one, and I'm gonna drop KS down as well. I think you're slotted somewhere in here for me, unless you've got major complaints there. Yeah, because I love the bulky team with staying power. That's just something that I really like in draft, and that's sort of what your team has. I don't think it's quite as good as Emboss's or Otto's team, and I might even put Emboss above Otto the more I'm thinking about it, but do you think that that's about right?
I mean, I think that it's good. I don't know if I would have put myself in the top quadrant, but I'm also biased, so I can't really say a whole lot about my, like, where you think my team is, because I just like I'm the one who drafted it. I think it's good. I don't know. I think that if you feel comfortable with it there, then I think that's solid.
Yeah, I just think Comfey, the more I think about it, Comfey, Rillaboom, Skeledirge, even without looking at the Latios, that just sort of terrifies me because Skeledirge can just keep setting up, run a lot of natural bulk, and then just keep getting healed to full, and that's pretty scary.
Yeah,
But
pretty cool. Pretty cool
yeah,
stuff.
up
My
next,
team is sick.
yeah, your team's sick. Up next, we've got Hunter's team, which Tornadus, Ceruledge, because who else is gonna pick Ceruledge in round 2? I guess. Tornadus team. Then he's got the Ursaluna, so he does have the Ursaluna Tailwind and Trick Room with the Reuniclus. Zoroark to let him play some Mind Games. Orthworm to let him just EQ the Ursaluna next to it sometimes. He's got a lot of things he can EQ next to. He's got Doxbun. I don't think he's got anything that triggers the Doxbun, which is the one downside I see. And then Samurott.
Ceruledge can.
Ceruledge
has Lava Plume, so...
Yeah, but that's not what it wants to do. But yeah, I guess technically it can.
Technically it can, yes.
Then the Samurott is also a solid addition. I mean, this team checks every box I want. It has really good Tailwind, really good Trick Room, speed tiers that are diverse enough but can also take advantage of both, and some just really powerful options. I don't think I got much more to say. It's an Ursaluna team that can take advantage of both speed controls, has a setup option in Ceruledge.
I think that the picks are hit or miss, right? Because like Torn is one of my least favorite mons in draft to go up against. I think it's just kind of absurd. Ceruledge is good. Poltergeist is a really big buff for it, so I think that's a great pick. I had considered Ceruledge at one point for my own team because I figured that healing would be nice, but got taken round 2, so I also adjusted. I love Turbo Bear, so like Fast Bear with Tailwind, I think that's really strong. And then Reuniclus is one of my favorite Trick Room setters. I don't think it got buffed in any big way. From my understanding, it didn't get like any of the things that it needed. So, gosh, how do you spell this Pokemon's name? Oh, it's R-E. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think it got, because like Reuniclus really needed like a fairy type move to really help it out because it can't hit dark types worth a damn. So it didn't get that, unfortunately. But I mean, you could also just run like Terra Fairy and Terra Blast and just kind of call it a day. But Focus Blast if real, I guess. But the Mon is great. Like it has good stats and really good moves as well. So I think it's a good sweeper or setter, Trick Room setter. I don't love Zoroark because the only Mon Zoroark can really hide as that like is beneficial for is Ceruledge. Otherwise, like I'm gonna be clicking close combat into Ursaluna and Tornadus anyway, or and Orthworm anyway. So like hiding as one of those two is not ideal. And so it feels like a little bit of questionable. I think Dachshund is also a bit questionable. Because I think this team, what it really needs is a good fake out Mon. Like, not having fake out on a team like this, I think, is a little unfortunate. Because like no fake out, no redirection. Like Tailwind is all but guaranteed, but Trick Room is certainly not. So like, if you go super hard into a Trick Room, like if you go hard into like wanting to set Trick Room, and then your opponent just kind of beats Trick Room, then. Or is like able to keep you from setting it up, and that's really sad. But yeah, generally, I think it's all right. I think that you like this team a little bit more than I do, despite the fact that it has Turbo Bear. I just think some of the picks are not my favorite. But
yeah, well, I think the Zoroark works really well with the Trick Room mode, which is weird to say because you can have the Zoroark bluff as the Reuniclus and have Tornadus and Reuniclus in the back. So what you do in that case is, if there's a dark attack goes in there, Zoroark eats it, the Ursaluna is able to get an attack off, and then you're able to pick which speed control you want to go with if the Zoroark gets targeted down. So, I don't know, I just think there's some mind games you can play with the Zoroark in that case.
Certainly, yeah.
But where are you seeing this team then, if you're not liking it as much as I am?
I would put it probably at the bottom of the red tier or the top of the blue tier. Personally, I don't know. It's just something about it's just not clicking with me. Like I love Ceruledge, Zoroark, I think, and Orthworm is good too. But there's just something like it feels weird for me to rank a Torn team this low. So don't like
team,
yeah. So I almost like don't want to do it, but there's just a lot of picks on this team that I'm not super into. So I guess I'm gonna.
Okay, we can
I'll stick with it.
compromise. We can compromise. I'll put it at the top of the red tier.
Okay, that's fine.
And then things probably get bumped down a little bit unless the last few teams are all bad.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at Frontman's team. We got the Fluttermane, Heatran, Hitmontop, Iron Leaf, Swampert, Noivern, Girafarig, Cinccino, Bellibolt, Venomoth. He gets Fluttermane 2 seasons in a row. I think Heatran's a good partner with it. I like Hitmontop. I don't love Iron Leaves. I don't really love Swampert. Noivern's a fine partner for what this team wants to do with Tailwind for the fast modes. This team's just really soft to Trick Room. Like, yes, I know Girafarig can cancel it out, but there's like nothing this team has to answer Trick Room. Maybe Swampert you can consider a little bit. But
nah, you're sleeping on Bellibolt, dude.
okay, is that a real Pokemon? Is Bellibolt a real Pokemon in draft?
I would have loved to have gotten Bellibolt on my team because it just kind of fits what I wanted. I drafted around, but on this team, I don't know. Can't say for sure.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the team overall. Like obviously, it's got a powerful fantasy core with the Fluttermane, Heatran, and the Noivern. And
I don't really like that they're all like this team is super special attack heavy. It's like like I feel like one Snarl kind of just like ruins a lot of what this team is going for. And like your strongest physical attacker is Iron Leaves, and like that mon is so unbelievably mid.
Technician Hitmontop might be stronger, but
I think that the strongest physical attacker on this team, unironically, might be my goat Cinccino, because of the technician and
because
the skill link. Yeah, quote unquote pop bomb. It's like it's a pop bomb sympathizer.
Yeah.
I think. I generally agree with you though. Like it's hard for me to like. I think Fluttermane is unbelievably good, and he paired it with Fake Out plus Intimidate Hitmontop, which is great. But I don't know. I'm having a hard time like kind of liking a lot of this team, so it makes me not want to rank it.
Yeah, I found Fluttermane very narrow in draft a lot of the time. Like it has a lot of moves, but it just always ends up doing the same thing because it's really powerful. But like you can prep for that.
I think that in past formats, it was way easier to get away with being carried by Fluttermane, because I think that my VDL team was kind of carried by Fluttermane, but I think now that the power level has gone up as like exponentially as it has with all of like the new mons that came out in the DLCs, Fluttermane is like kind of weird to say because Fluttermane is like the most dominant mon in real VGC, but like in Draft League, it is like a mon that you can.
Yeah, it's like Among Us.
So, yeah. So,
I don't know. I'm probably putting this somewhere down here, unless you feel strongly that it should be somewhere in this area.
I don't object to that.
Okay, I'll throw it here for now. I just think this team is just weak to Terrafire.
Or Terra Poison. I think that both are not great.
But why don't you take us through Tay's team?
Yeah, so Tay kind of cooked in this draft, I'm not gonna lie. So it got Annihilate, Smeargle, Kilowatt, Typhlosion, Alcremie, Revavroom, Blastoise, Crook, Appleton, Hatchrim, and Graveler. I think that the two low tiers are pretty bad, Hatchrim, Graveler. And I have nothing else to say. The team is very good. Any team that has Annihilate on it is like just automatically going to be really ridiculous. And Follow Me from Smeargle just like really ties this team together. Like, it ties together Scarf Typhlosion, Clicking Eruption. You can set up with Shell Smash Revavroom Shell Smash Revavroom, Shell Smash Blastoise or Shift Gear Revavroom, and both of those options are really good. Um, you have multiple Fake Outers on the team with Smeargle um, and Blastoise, which that's very strong. Annihilate is absurd, and you have good Tailwind on the team with Kilowatt as well. Um,
Yeah,
Alcremie. I'm not sold on Alcremie
me
because
either.
I think that as a fairy type, it kind of fails at being a fairy type. So I'm just curious to see like how it will do. I guess now that it has a good single target fairy move with alluring voice, it might feel a little stronger because before its only fairy type move that it could really run is Gleam. So maybe that buff is enough to make it do better. Um, and the abilities are good. Like Sweet Veil is good, Aroma Veil is good. They both have very good draft uses. But yeah, I think the big thing about this team is just like Smeargle is basically coming every week. What set is it gonna run? How is it gonna do? Like, well, that's just gonna be the big question mark. Because in my opinion, this is like probably a top 3 team, just because Ape plus Smeargle sounds so ridiculous.
Yeah, just
But
Water Shuriken, you're right.
yeah, that's also an option because Smeargle can do that. um, or he can spore you while you set up a Shell Smash with the Blastoise, and then it's just kind of over. Like, or
Yeah, or
yeah,
just
just like
Shell Smash your Smeargle and then Baton Pass it to Ape.
okay, let's not talk nonsense now. But the point stands that the team is super strong,
Yeah.
and even manages to get like some tech stuff like Intimidate from the Crocodile and Tailwind and Fake Out. I think the big thing is that the Trick Room matchup is a little tough. Not even like a good Trick Room setter on the team is present, but I think
Smeargle.
I mean, you can imprison Trick Room with Smeargle, but that's kind of a waste of what Smeargle can do.
So actually, why I really like this team is Annihilate's one of those Pokemon that doesn't really care if it's moving second if you build it the right way.
That's true.
So it can just sort of ignore the fact the opponent's using Trick Room. I think Krookodile a consistent overperformer along with Kilowattrel, so that's a Disquake mode of 2 Pokemon that generally I think overperform in draft. Yeah, I think this is the best team so far.
When I made my statement at the start of the draft, at the start of this, saying that there was a clear best team and a clear worst team in my mind, this was the clear best team just because like Annihilate is broken.
All right, then I guess we'll see if Squirrely fits at number 15 or if we're gonna have a big slide somewhere.
I think it's gonna be the latter because this team is pretty good.
Yeah. Thunderous Eye, Basculegion. Oh, it's a rain team. Thunderous Eye, Basculegion, Glamora with Meteor Beam, Ludicolo, there's the Pelipper, and the Foongus, and the Registeel, and the Pikachu. And Mienshao. Mienshao and Noctowl are both decent, but not part of the Rain Core.
Noctowl is, dude, you get those tinted lens, 100%
Hurricanes.
accurate hurricanes, so
I don't know. Feels
don't
redundant.
don't sleep on the owl. Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously just bullshitting, but I think Noctowl you could definitely have done better with regards to like the tier, what is it, tier 6? Like there are definitely better options that could have fit your team than Noctowl. But generally, like yeah, this team is nuts. Like talk about rain. bro is enforcing rain and nothing you can do about it.
And there's not a lot of counter weather. I guess
Actually, there's none. There's no other weather setter. Oh, does KS? No, no. KS doesn't have a hard weather setter.
Yeah,
though. Like
it's manual weather, but
weather like Pelipper was the only hard weather setter drafted throughout the entire draft. Like no Politoed and no no hard weather setters besides Pelipper, which is crazy. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
does
there's a lot of good
Ludicolo
things on
get?
this team, a lot of type redundancies that make it a little lower for me than I think it otherwise would have been, because the damage I'm worried a bit about like electric type attacks into this team to some extent. I know he's got multiple ways to mitigate that. And then grass, I think grass types look generally good into this team. You get the couple hurricane options, but there's some things that make me a little nervous. Registeel, I think, works really well as a secondary win con that you don't always see all the time. So I'm decently excited about seeing that on this team. Overall, I think it's a solid team. It's probably the single most like scripted team in terms of having a primary game plan out of the entire division, and it's got a very strong primary game plan. But I'm not sure how adaptive it'll be if that primary game plan is taken away, except for the Registeel, which I think is a big saving grace for this team. Like, obviously, Basculegion and Ludicolo are powerful in the rain, and Thunderous gets the 100% accurate Wild Bolts. Like, it's a very good team, but it feels like it's gonna run into people setting Sunny Day every week, and then it's gonna be just a bit harder to play.
Yeah, I think that in general, that's a pretty fair take. I think Glamora is definitely not a mon that should be scoffed at. Like
Oh, yeah, it's awesome.
Meteor Beam was exactly the buff that Glamora needed to actually be a super strong threat. And I think that it ties even better with kind of the nature of the team, right? Like he could go with like some really bulky stuff like the Fungus, Thunderous, Registeel kind of play style pairs really nicely with Glamora because Thunderous can be, it's not easy to break that mon if you EV it to be bulky, um, as we've seen like historically. Then Fungus and Registeel, like Registeel's hard to break, and then if your opponent's entire team is poisoned, then everything is on a clock while you're trying to kill Registeel. And if you put too many resources into trying to kill Registeel, then Registeel just protects and you're taking poison chip. And yeah, it's just this team looks like kind of a mess to play against because the primary mode is strong. Like you could just get blown away by Basculegion and Ludicolo in one game, and then in the second game get stalled to death by Poison and Registeel. So it's like I think that it's not as straight. I think it is straightforward, but I think that the two like primary strategies complement each other really well, and that is scary. So
Team folds to Clodsire. 0.
real. Who has Cloudnire? Pedons has a free matchup here.
Okay, but no, I think I'd put this team one step below Chaos Knight Rider.
So you think it's just one better than Wakeman and all that? I could see that. Yeah, I could see that.
Okay, so let's slide all of these down, and we'll put Squirrely in here. Yeah, I think generally that seems pretty fair.
There might be an argument to saying that Otto's team is better than Tay's now that I
don't
look
think
at
so.
Otto's team again, but
no, I think Taze is better.
I would love if that were a matchup at some point this season. It probably isn't because those are two pretty lucky coaches, but
I don't know the playoff.
I am wrong. I get to eat my words because that's a week 3 matchup. So
that'll be a fun one to watch.
one of you two, please record that match. I gotta see that.
Sure, we can make one of them record it. But yeah, thanks for joining me today, Chad. I'll get this up pretty soon, and thank you all coaches who are going to be playing this season. Like we said, these are not predictive at all. They are just reflective of how we view the teams in a vacuum. And I think that the teams were pretty narrowly banded this time. Like, I don't think there were a lot of outliers one way or the other.
So I agree with that statement.
Really excited to get into the season and looking forward to see how these week 1 matches go. But thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.